Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about all of the kind of under the radar games that we hadn't had a chance to get to throughout the week. Definitely some really interesting ones that I'm going to be watching very, very closely, especially that Ashton JT game at the very end of the day. But let's get into my best bets for this upcoming weekend. Had a pretty good week last week. Went 5-3. I am fully 500 on the year, 19-19-2. So hopefully we can get on the right side of things this upcoming weekend and play and get some big time wins. But it's a tough week to get a beat on. No two ways about that. A lot of really close lines, a lot of games that are almost impossible to really get a beat on, but feel pretty good about the picks that I have. I'm going to take LSU plus the points, and frankly, it could have anything to do with a lot of football reasons. I could tell you about LSU's offense. I could tell you about the ability to attack the back end of Ole Miss's defense. Frankly, you're giving LSU points in Death Valley at night. That's it. LSU giving points in Death Valley at night does not happen. It should not happen. So I'm going to take the points, to be totally honest with you. But Brian Kelly, 20-3 coming off a bye in his career. He's 12-0 in night games at LSU, including that improbable win against Bama in year one. I think they get it done. I think it's going to be an incredible game. This is one of those that it's kind of just a gut pick, no doubt about that. It's one of those games that I just think they're going to be able to get it done. And if they lose that game, I think it's going to be Caden Davis just ripping a game-winning field goal. I think that's the way that Ole Miss is going to be able to get out of this one. Going to be an incredible game. I think LSU comes out on top in it. Then we got Iowa-Washington under 42.5. I picked the under in the Washington-Michigan game last week, and I lost on a Washington field goal at the very end of the game. So a little upsetting, but I'm going to bet against them again. I feel pretty confident that this is going to go under for a reason that really didn't show itself in the Michigan game, kind of to my surprise. That Michigan back end is not quite as good as a lot of people think it is. Will Johnson is the really good player back there. You avoid Will Johnson, you're probably in pretty good shape attacking this back end, and that's exactly what we saw in the Washington-Michigan game. Will Rogers was absolutely incredible, made a number of plays, and it looked like this Michigan defense did not have a lot of counters. I think Iowa will have counters. I think they have incredible guys on that back end. They have about 5 guys that I think are going to play in the NFL at some point, and it's going to be incredible to watch that unfold, but I think it's going to be a slogfest. I think Caleb Johnson, I think Jonah Coleman are likely the two biggest yard getters in this game, and I think it probably ends 20-17. I do have Iowa in it, but man, it's going to be an incredible one, and frankly, it's going to be it's going to be Big Ten football. I'll just leave it at that for the time being. Georgia Tech, I do love -5 at UNC. It might have dropped down to -4, but I'll keep it at -5 for the time being. This is going to be a really interesting game because UNC has a million things to think about. They have so many things behind the scenes. Mac Brown possibly retiring at any point this year, but specifically at the end of the year. A lot of stuff around that program, and frankly, it feels like those fans are a little apathetic. I think they still love their team. I still think they want them to be successful, but I think they see a line like Georgia Tech -5, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. When it probably should never happen. Let's be totally honest. A Georgia Tech team should never be able to come up to UNC and be almost a touchdown favorite against you. That should never happen, but here we are. And frankly, it's happening because Omarion Hampton's the only person on this offense that should scare anyone for UNC. He's an absolute monster, to be totally fair. He can win this game by himself, but the reality is Georgia Tech has been pretty good against the run. 21st in the country, giving up a little over 100 yards a game. If they keep Omarion Hampton even a little bit under wraps, I don't see UNC winning this one. So I'm going to lean toward Georgia Tech. I think they got a little bit going over there in Atlanta, and I think they win this one and set themselves up really well for a possible bowl berth going forward. And then we got the Mississippi State-Georgia game. I like Mississippi State to cover this spread for a number of different reasons, but probably the biggest one is I don't think Georgia can start fast. I don't think they have that in their bag. And frankly, I thought they would. I thought they would absolutely have that in their bag. I thought Carson Beck would be able to come out ripping, and frankly, I don't know if Carson Beck is all that big of a problem. I think he has some issues that he has to deal with. No two ways about that. I think the play calling's a little all over the place. It's not quite as bad as people are making it out to be, especially Georgia fans, but the reality is it does need to hit another level, another grade, and they have to be sure that they can worry teams on the defensive side of the ball because, frankly, looking forward to that Texas game, I don't know if they're going to scare Texas defensively much at all. And then the other side of this, I think when you look back at that Mississippi State playing Texas a couple of weeks ago, they had very little interest in winning that game. They were running the ball pretty consistently. They did not really care to push the ball downfield because they pretty much knew that if they pushed the ball downfield, Texas was going to get a couple of picks and make that one look ugly. I tend to believe they're going to do the same thing here. I think they're just going to try to get in there, try to stay as close as possible, not necessarily overdo their bounds, and probably get beat by about 30 points, but at the end of the day, not quite as bad as you expected it to be, at least Vegas expects it to be. So I expect Mississippi State to get not a win by any means, but at least play a little bit closer early on in this game and be able to ride out that 35.5. I also like Florida to cover that 15.5 at Tennessee this upcoming weekend. This one's really interesting because Tennessee's coming off that tough loss. The offense is in a very weird place going forward. You would feel that maybe they would have that little bit of mentality that we're going to go in, we're going to tear this team to pieces, we're going to move forward. I don't know if they have that ability, at least as of right this second. I do think they have Nico Imaliava absolutely has that ability. You can open that up at some point and maybe you can get it going. But frankly, this is going to be a running team. This is going to be a team that leans on Dylan Sampson, that asks him to do a ton in this game. And frankly, I don't know if they're able to create much of a margin in this one. I think the back end of that defense is going to be able to be taken advantage of at least a couple of times in this game. And you let Trey Wilson get loose one time. You let Elijah Badger get loose one time. And this game totally changes. And then Tennessee can't pull away. So when I'm looking at this team right now, Nico has not been good in passes over 10-plus yards, especially against OU and Arkansas. If that continues in this one, which Florida's not nearly the defenses of those two, but they're a really good defense. They're very solid, and they're going to be a lot more than a couple of the other defenses that Tennessee's faced. So it's one of those games that I think is just going to be a little bit gross at times. I think it's going to be a lot of running the ball, a lot of slowing this thing down, and then I think Florida's going to make just those couple of plays. I do have Tennessee winning, but I think it's going to be an interesting fight, and Florida's going to keep it at the very least pretty close in this one. I love this pick. I love Iowa State -3 at West Virginia. I think West Virginia's done a great job over the last couple of weeks. They've played really good football. They found their identity in running the ball. Iowa State is going to be able to stop you. Iowa State is going to be able to stonewall you up front, and maybe they don't even need to stonewall you because, frankly, West Virginia ran for 389 yards last weekend. You hold them to 150 to 200, frankly. I think they might need 250 on the ground to even win this game. They're running the ball 61% of the time. It looks like that's going up as you get further into conference play, and Iowa State's giving up 121 yards per game. They've been really, really solid. I think West Virginia's not going to have enough on the ground. And then on the other side, Iowa State's offense is really fun. You have two really fun players on the outside like Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. You have Rocco Becht running this offense very efficiently. Sounds like Abu Sama might be back in this game, which would be absolutely huge for them. But the reality is, I think West Virginia's done a really good job the last couple of weeks. I don't think it remotely continues in this one, if I'm being honest. And then we got Memphis, South Florida, under 60.5. This is the game that has been bounced around every which way from Tuesday. They were going to play tonight. They were going to play tomorrow down there in South Florida, and hoping everything is okay out there. It's been an absolute nightmare. A number of people dealing with things that I can't even fathom, and a lot of people can't even fathom. So if you can give, absolutely do. There's a number of different places you can give to, including in the college football world. I know Josh Pate is releasing his shirt. I know there's a number of different places that are doing really incredible things. So donate where you can. No two ways about that. But getting back to the pick, I actually do think that plays a little bit of a factor here with all of the craziness going on around there, with all of the different things that they're having to worry about other than football. I wouldn't be surprised if this one started a little bit slow offensively. But then you got Byron Brown. It sounds like his status is very much up in the air. He might go, but at the end of the day, it felt like he might have been out for the year before that. So I don't really know what's happening over there. Maybe he's the quarterback. If he's not, I don't like them to even put up 20 points in this game, to even put up 25 points in this game. So it's going to be an absolute fight. And then Memphis has just been all over the place. They played really good football offensively one week, then played really bad the next week. I think South Florida has plenty of dudes on that defensive line to cause them problems, so I will take the under 60.5, I think, with all of the extenuating circumstances around that game, and then the offense is on the field. I very much like this pick. And then I got Stanford plus 23 at Notre Dame. This is a very interesting one because I think Notre Dame's starting to find themselves. I think they're playing really good football. They've been throwing the ball a lot more effectively the last couple of weeks. I think they're doing really, really great things. I also think Ashton Daniels is just that dangerous of a quarterback. I think he has the ability to, whenever he walks into a football game, regardless of who's on the other sideline, he has the ability to cause you problems. So Notre Dame can have the perfect defense call. They can do everything they want to do. The reality is he's going to get loose a couple of times, and he doesn't have to get loose that many times because I don't think Notre Dame's going to put up 45, 50 points in this game. I think they're probably right around 40 or right around 35, and then Stanford's just got to score 2 touchdowns. So I very much like Stanford in this one. I think it's a little bit of a fight. I think Notre Dame's going to probably run the ball to victory. Just say, we can take what we're given. We can run the ball down their throat and walk out with a 20-point win. So I don't think Stanford's going to be all that close in this game, but I do think they cover that 23.5 or that 23. I just think it's a little too aggressive. But it's going to be an incredible week. It's one of those weeks that it's kind of hard to get a good bet in. It's kind of hard to feel really confident in the bet because so many close lines, so many games that could go either direction, but I feel pretty good. Avoided that Oregon-Ohio State game, went to that LSU-Ole Miss game, which made me feel a little bit nervous, but at the end of the day, I do like LSU there. I do think they cover that spread, but let's take our last break here, and when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of just tying up loose ends for this upcoming weekend. We'll talk about the Colby Young incident very briefly. We'll talk about the transfer portal moving, and then we'll get into injury reports, which are plentiful around the country. So we'll break it all down right after this, so stick with us.